Luxury has a peculiar way of rewriting history. Today, caviar is served in Michelin-starred restaurants, aboard superyachts drifting through the Mediterranean, and in private dining rooms where a single evening can cost more than most people spend on a vacation. A small tin can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. It has become one of the world's clearest symbols of wealth, refinement, and exclusivity. But what if that wasn't always true? What if I told you there was a time when caviar was so common that American saloons handed it out for free? Not as a delicacy, not as a reward, simply as a salty snack. The transformation seems almost impossible. How could one of the world's most luxurious foods have once been treated as casually as a bowl of peanuts? The answer has surprisingly little to do with taste. Instead, it's a story about abundance and scarcity, about marketing, psychology, and changing perceptions. It's a story about how societies decide what is valuable and why. Because luxury isn't born, it's created. Long before caviar appeared on silver platters beside chilled champagne, it came from one of the oldest fish on Earth. The sturgeon has existed for more than 200 million years, surviving mass extinctions that wiped out the dinosaurs. These enormous prehistoric fish once swam in astonishing numbers throughout the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, and rivers stretching across Europe, Asia, and North America. Their eggs, what we now call caviar, were plentiful. In the United States, during the late 19th century, sturgeon were so abundant that fishermen often considered them a nuisance. They damaged nets, crowded waterways, and were caught in extraordinary numbers. With so much supply and relatively little demand, the eggs had almost no perceived value. In fact, many American saloons began offering caviar completely free to customers, not because it was luxurious, because it was salty. Just like the free peanuts served in many bars today, the salt encouraged patrons to order another drink. Imagine walking into a crowded tavern after work. On the counter sits a bowl overflowing with caviar, no velvet box, no mother-of-pearl spoon, no dress code, just another complimentary snack. Today, that image feels almost absurd, yet it happened. So, what changed? How did something once considered ordinary become one of the most exclusive foods in the world? To answer that question, we have to travel thousands of miles east, to the courts of emperors, the tables of aristocrats, and the beginnings of one of luxury's greatest transformations. Long before caviar appeared in American saloons, it had already begun building a very different reputation around the shores of the Caspian and Black Seas. For centuries, the rivers feeding these inland waters were home to enormous populations of sturgeon, some living for decades before producing the eggs that would eventually become caviar. Communities throughout the region had harvested and preserved those eggs for generations, but over time, one thing became increasingly clear. Not everyone had access to them. The finest caviar was making its way onto the tables of nobles, merchants, and eventually the imperial courts of Russia. By the 16th century, sturgeon had become so closely associated with prestige that Russian rulers controlled many of the fisheries along the Volga River, one of the world's great sources of wild sturgeon. As European trade expanded, so did caviar's reputation. What had once been a regional food slowly became an international delicacy. French chefs praised its complexity. European aristocrats embraced it as a symbol of refinement. Luxury restaurants served it with ceremony rather than abundance. Every detail became intentional. The chilled silver bowls, the crystal, the mother-of-pearl spoons, chosen because metal could subtly alter the flavour, the champagne poured alongside it. None of these rituals made the caviar taste dramatically different, but they changed how people experienced it. Because luxury has never been defined by an object alone. Luxury is theatre, it is anticipation, it is ritual, and above all, it is a story. While Europe was transforming caviar into an emblem of sophistication, America was unknowingly supplying much of the world. During the late 19th century, rivers along the East Coast, particularly the Delaware River, were producing astonishing quantities of sturgeon. Entrepreneurs began exporting American caviar to Europe, where it was welcomed as a luxury product. At one point, the United States had become one of the world's largest exporters of caviar. Here's the irony. The very same caviar that Americans were giving away in bars was being shipped across the Atlantic, where wealthy Europeans paid premium prices to serve it at elegant dinner parties. The product hadn't changed. The fish hadn't changed. Only the perception had. And perception is often the most valuable ingredient of all.